Okay, today is July 24th, 2010. We're conducting an interview with Kizito Kalima for the Rwandan genocide survivor. And the interviewer is Benjamin Musuyeku, and the language will be in English, and we're in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay. Today is July 24th, 2004. And my name is Benjamin Musuhuke. I'm going to interview Kizito Kalima, a 1994 Rwandan genocide survivor. And the language of the interview will be English. And the interview is being conducted in Indianapolis, Indiana, USA, in Kizito's apartment. Okay, nice to meet you again this morning.
Thank you.
Today is July 24th, 2010,
Okay.
and I'm going to be interviewing you. Could you please tell us your name and spell your names letter by letter?
Okay, my name is Kizito Kalima. Kizito K-I-Z-I-T-O, and the last name is Kalima K-A-L-I-M-A.
Do you have a middle name?
Yeah, my middle name is Dixiem, D-I-X-I-E-M-E.
Do you have a nickname?
Oh, okay, yeah. I have a nickname. They call me Z, or Big Z.
And what does that mean?
Because I'm big, 6'9", and that's the nickname I got from my basketball coaches when I came here to United States in 1998.
Have you ever changed your name, or have you always been called Kalima and Kizito?
Back in Africa, in Rwanda, in Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, all the countries I lived in, they used to call me Kizito. But when I moved to United States in 1998, they started calling me Z because my coaches and my teammates could not pronounce Kizito. So they came up with the Z, which was easier and creative.
Creative way. Any significance to the name Kizito?
Yeah, it's actually they want to call me KK, but it means something else. So they just took the letter and the letter Z, which was easier. They just call me Z. They call Big Z. Actually, you start off with the Big Z, and now most people call me Z. You know, my coworkers, my friends, always everybody calls me Big Z. I mean Z.
Okay. Tell us where you were born, when you were born.
Yeah, I was born in Nyanza, in Rwanda, in southern part of Rwanda called Nyanza, which is the southern province right now in June 3rd, 1979.
And what was it called then?
That time was called Nyanza, but the what they call sector back in the days, it's called a Gasoro. So, but right now, things have changed. It's Nyanza district, and I guess everything is still called Nyanza.
So that's where you were born, that's where you were raised?
That's where I was born, that's where I was raised. Yeah.
Any siblings?
Yeah, I grew up in a big family of 10 kids. I'm the last born in my family, meaning I have 5 sisters and 4 brothers. And 9 of them are still living, that's still alive. 1 of them died during the genocide, along with my mom.
And are these biological siblings?
Yeah, all of them are my biological siblings.
Same father, same mother?
Definitely.
How about your parents?
What else?
Do you have your parents? Who are they?
No, my parents died during 1994, and my dad's name was Dennis Kalima, and my mom was Cecilia Kalima. And my dad actually died a month before genocide. It was the way the former government or the genocidal government will get rid of people who are influential in the community. My dad was a community leader for a long, long time. So he came from church. I was in boarding school that time, but he came from church. He bought a sold a Coke at the at the corner store, and once he got home, he started vomiting blood, and he was taken to the hospital. He died right there. So later on, we found out that the way he died it was a poison. It was it's like some kind of a chemical they used to clean up the cows, ticks. I believe they call ticks. So it was a very powerful chemical. It pretty much an acid. My mom was died during the genocide. She was killed in May 1994, I believe, and yeah, she was with me during when the genocide started. But when we start running away, hiding, and she was picked by the militia leader. She was put in the trunk of a small car, the Nissan Datsun. It's comparing to American cars like a Neon, so it was a little tiny small car. So they opened the trunk, put in her. She was driven away. I didn't see her getting killed, but I saw her being driven away, and she was killed at mayor's office, Komine, Kigoma, which is like a mayor's office if you compare to American way. So that was the last time seeing her.
Do you remember the dates when your dad passed away?
I believe it was March. I don't remember the date. I don't remember the exact date, but I kind of lost it that time. I was in boarding school, and my brother-in-law who died later in genocide, came to pick me up at school, and when I saw him, I was excited that he's bringing me some money or some milk, which was big. So when he came to me, I remember I was in the cafeteria, and the school principal called me and said, "You need to go to the principal's office." I got so scared. I thought I did something wrong. And when he got there, they said, "Your daddy died." So from there, I just freaked out because I never said anybody died. But it was the beginning of genocide. So I remember exactly the date unless I asked my brothers and sisters. I was a teenager. I was young.
And remember the name of the hospital where he died?
He died in a way going to Kabwe Hospital. Yeah, he was driven because Nyanza where we lived. It was like I believe 2 or 3 hours. I would say 2 hours from Kabwe Hospital, which is a big hospital. So they couldn't figure out. They took him to the small clinic by our house, but they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they hired ambulance, and he died. The story I got from my brothers, they say he died in between Nyanza and Kabwe in Ruhango area. He died in an ambulance, and that's the only thing I know. I know about him.
And what's the name of your school where when your dad passed away, you said you were at school and they informed you?
Groupe Scolaire do Save. It's in southern province in Butare. It's like 15 minutes, 20 minutes from Butare downtown.
Okay. And you said you were called by your principal.
Yeah.
Do you remember his name?
He died during the genocide. He was a brother in a Catholic church. His name was Fabian.
Brother Fabian.
Yeah, Brother Fabian. I remember his last name. Yeah.
Tell me about your family background. What do you recall about the area you grew up, the village, and how your home was, the house, and the neighborhood?
Okay. I grew up in, I would say, in a very well-off family comparing to America. Based on the African standard of living, we were well off than our neighbors. My dad was very influential in the community. My dad was back during the kingdoms. He would work with the royal family. He became a mayor. He became a community leader. Pretty much, he was very, very influential and community activist. That he was known a lot. So in my family, it was a big compound. We had like 5 houses, and we have, of course, in Africa, you know, you have to have a lot of cows to show to show that you know, you are well off. So we have a lot of cows, and my family, my uncles and aunties all live in the same, I would say, the same line. From we lived by the highway, so I would say like a 5 miles down road was our family. I mean, my aunties, my uncles, my cousin, everybody, and we were, you know, we were well off. My brothers were old. I'm the last born in my family. All my brothers were grown and they had the jobs when I was growing up, so it was good.
You said your dad was a community leader. Of which community? Specific name of the community?
Nyanza community.
Nyanza community.
Nyanza community. After he left the politics, he was involved in politics for a long time until I believe he was a mayor until 1963. That's the story I always get from my brothers. But after 1963, he was jailed. He was a political prisoner for a long time. So back in he was released, I believe, in the 70s, and he became a school administrator / a teacher. So, and by that time, he continued to help people, you know, through everything. You know, he raised a lot of kids from both tribes, Hutu and Tutsis, and he was involved in the church. He was a deacon, actually, in the Catholic Church. Okay. Very, you know, he was very active in our community.
Okay, you mentioned a little bit about your brothers.
Mm-hmm.
What are their names, and are these your biological brothers?
Yeah, our firstborn, Evod, he's now our dad. He's into politics. He's an MP actually. He's like, I'll compare like a congressman in Rwanda, very involved in politics. And before that, he was the vice governor of Butare. And my sister, Emerita, she still lives in Nyanza in our area. My other sister, Irene, she died during genocide with her kids. Well, has 6 kids died. My others, my Beata, Egid, Zita, and Benjamin were out of the country during the genocide, but they returned in Rwanda right now. So, and they live in Rwanda, except one, Egid, who lives in Europe, and Monique and me and I, so we were there during the genocide.
Okay. I probably will ask you the names of your nieces and nephews a little bit later, if you remember their names, those that you said passed away during the genocide. But you said that your dad was taken to jail, a political prisoner. By who?
By the first government of Rwanda, which was after the kingdoms. There was what they called the first genocide. So the first genocide left a lot of people fled the country. And my dad was left because he was educated and he had been in politics, so they needed somebody to teach and train him to work for them. So he was used. They used him, and he worked for the first government. After the war, he trained the new government workers. So after they were pretty much done with him, they put him in a prison. So, and he was released, I believe, by one of his friends who was a minister during that time, and my dad was his son's godfather. So, and I guess he was raised based on health issue. He had some legs issue, like problem. So I guess that's why he was raised. I'm not quite sure.
Do you know the name of the minister who had
Sagahutu, yeah.
Sagahutu.
Yeah, Sagahutu, because he was a friend of our family for a long time.
Okay. Now, tell me about you growing up in Nyanza. your social groups? What things did you like doing when you were growing
I was
up?
very active in sports. I played soccer, volleyball, basketball, running, marathon, and I had my little blue bicycle. So it was very known in my area because I used to ride around and I would make money out of it. I would just run out to buy some, mandas. It's like a little small donuts. So that was the fun memories of it. And, as I said, I grew up in a big family, very loving family, very Christian family. And my aunties, my uncles, all of them liked me. I mean, I've just felt that I was very protected, very loved. And I was blessed enough because I was doing well in school. Never had to struggle, had any problem with school. So it was very, very, very good memory. That's what I have, and that's what I'm trying to stick with it.
How about the neighborhood?
The neighborhood, it's typical African, I'll call them a village, but we lived by the main highway, which was easier, which was, I would say, civilized, modern, comparing to other places in Rwanda. And it was, of course, we had our big land, but it was shared by, it was bordered with my aunties, my uncles, it was like a family land for the whole, I would say the whole village of Gasoro, that part of it was our land because it belonged to our granddad, our grandfather, who was a chief back in the 1800. So it was a family area. All my family lived there.
And what was your grandfather's name?
Semazu. That's Semazu test. No. My Kaje Guhakwa, that was my grandfather, who was a chief, and his dad, who was pretty much in health or given the land by the king, it was Semazu.
As a young Kizito growing up in Nyanza, Butare, did you ever come across the feeling of being a Tutsi versus being any other tribe? How did that ever come across you in your life?
Yeah, definitely. Physical appearance. We are all tall. Tall means Tutsi in Rwanda back in days. So I was real tall and real skinny. My dad was almost 7 feet. My brothers. So I grew up knowing that I'm a Tutsi, but because of the way I was raised, my dad never mentioned it. He always tell us we are human beings and we are good as everybody. But I would sense I would say what they call what I can say called racism when I go to play soccer, when I go play with the other kids. That's why I realized that some of them don't like me, not because I cannot play, because I was very athlete. I was actually better than most of the kids. But you'll find, sometimes people don't want to pick me, and they say some painful comments that, you're a snake, you're a cockroach, we don't play with the cockroach, we don't play with the snakes. So, and, it got to the point when I was in the first grade, I'm 6, 7 years old. That's why I start sensing it, that I have to be careful who I hang out with.
And are there any other instances when you felt you were denied of some opportunity because of how you looked and who you were?
Yeah, that's when they tried to, when I was in, I believe in 4th grade, I don't remember exactly which grade I was in, but the Rwandan military were coming to schools, pick the best student to go to the military academy, which called the sous-officier back in the days, which is in Butare. So they came to my school, and I was one of the best student there. So we fill out the papers, and you have to put Tutsi or Hutu. I put the Tutsi, and one of my friend, his name was Noel. He got picked, and I had the better grades than him, and he was my best friend. His actually he was mixed. His mom was a Tutsi, his dad was Hutu. So, and when we were going back home, I asked him like, why they never picked me? He said, because you're a Tutsi. So, and that was like wake up call, because I just what the test we did was just math and French and Kinyarwanda, which I scored 8, and it was physical activity, running, and I was good. I beat everybody, but they say no, you can't go there. You can join the military academy because you're a Tutsi. That was the first time I just realized, like, okay, this is serious.
And when were you in 4th grade because this happened when you were in 4th grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did you remember the dates when you were in 4th grade?
I would say there was 89, before the war started in Rwanda, because after that, that's what the genocide, the RPF attacked Rwanda, which was in 1990. So it was late in the 80s.
And at this time, you are at Save Group School?
No, I was in Gataga Primary School. I was in primary school.
Okay. Okay, as you talk about primary school, tell us about your education as a...
Yeah, I went to primary school, which is called the elementary school here in America, as in a place called Gatagara. It's a center where they help people who have any kind of disabilities, handicapped people. So it was a center for people who are physically disabled and who are blind. And I believe, the blind people, was a school for blind people and people who are disabled. My dad was a teacher there, / a headmaster. So he took us there. He took us there, me and my sister. So we studied, and it was an environment where it was a kind of a boarding school type of, but we will stay there, and we'll go home on weekends. Most of the time we'll go home on the weekends, but it was kind of boarding school / day school.
Okay.
But it was a very nice school, very advanced based on comparing to other schools in the surrounding area.
And which years were you in primary school, and what is the location of your primary school? Gatagara, where is Gatagara?
Gataga is like it's between between the Ruhango and Nyanza, and it was like I'll say 15 miles from my house. Okay. And I was in the primary school from 1986 to 1992, I believe. Yeah, 1992, 86, 92.
Okay. So you told us about this experience of being denied joining the Militaire Supérieure Academy because you were Tutsi. How did you deal with that later?
The first time I didn't know exactly what it was, and I thought it was just, I couldn't even figure out why somebody can be denied the opportunity because he's a Tutsi, and that's why I started confronting my dad, asking him why, and my dad never talked about the hatred and racism which was going on that time, because I believe he has suffered a lot. And I forgot to mention that my grandpa, Kaja Guhakwa, my dad's father, was killed in the first genocide in 1959. He was shot, and he died in front of my dad's face. And my dad, I guess, never got a chance to deal with it. So, so that time I asked him, I was like, why I didn't go to school? And that's why he told me, he's like, Tutsis and Hutus have their own, pretty much the percentage of the Tutsis going to school, to the government school, which was the best, big thing. So it's like there's no Tutsis allowed to join the army, police, or what they call gendarmerie that time. So, and that's pretty much I knew my place, and I just realized that I guess I'm gonna have to deal with it. I didn't know, but that time was during the war when the RPF was fighting.
Now, while at Gatagara primary school, right? Did you make any friends there?
Yeah, I made a lot of friends, but most of them died during the genocide. I know one guy left. He's a doctor right now in the Kanombe military barracks. He's a soldier.
What's his name?
And Haiti. That's the only guy. The last time, that's why he was older than me though. He was way older than me. But that's the person I know who survived. We went to the same high school. I mean, in primary school.
And his name was Anheri.
Yeah, and Haiti. His dad's name was Musafiri, who was my dad's friend. So I don't remember his last name, but he was in like 2 classes ahead of me, or 3 classes, I believe.
Okay. What memories do you have of at your school, at Gatagara Primary School?
It was a good memory. I was involved in sports, and I would say I was a very interesting character, because I would go to class and I would just sit down and get bored, because whatever they were teaching, I was ahead of it, because my dad would teach me, and my sisters were teachers in other primary schools, so they would practice their lesson to me. So I would go to class like ahead of everybody, and I would sit in class being bored and do some crazy stuff kids do, go through the windows, get in trouble, but not because I was bad, but just a little, just being a little stubborn. But I never got in big trouble. So, and I was much in sports, soccer and volleyball, and all kind of type of sports activities.
And who of your sisters was a teacher, and where did they teach?
Irene, the one who died during the genocide, and Beata. She grew up, she was in Tanzania during the genocide, but she's back now.
So she was teaching in Tanzania?
No, she was teaching before the war started, but before 1990.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And she fled their country. But my sister Irene was still in Rwanda, so and she was my neighbor, and she used to practice on me how, lessons, whatever she want to teach the following day or the following week.
Did your parents and your family generally get attached to any political parties in Rwanda before the genocide?
No, my dad left the politics, I believe, after I got out of prison back in the 70s or late 60s. But he never spoke about anything bad about the new government or the genocide government, as I call it, or the Hutu government. He never said anything bad about the politician. He always kept quiet. He became involved much in Catholic Church, but it was like an underground, some kind of grassroots movement about politics. Because I remember he used to talk to my, people who were older than me, tell them what happened. I would just sneak sometime, listen to them, tell them who did what happened, and what needs to be done to change the thing. But he was never out in politics, like in public.
Okay, so pre-1994,
Mm-hmm.
did you know anything about, say, political parties in Rwanda?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a very heated time that moment, because there was a lot of political parties, and it was when the RPF was fighting in northern Rwanda, so we knew exactly, because everything was stopped. There was there was a curfew, there was roadblockers everywhere. Actually, we had one in front of our house, because they just thought that my dad was they knew my dad, to some extent, he will help to change the political situation in Rwanda. So they made sure they had a roadblock by my house. So everybody who came to our house was pretty much monitored.
So what is RPF, and when did you first hear about RPF?
So RPF I would say that it's a political party / a rebel movement, which was created by the refugees, or the sons of, or the daughters of the first survivors of the first genocide back in 1959 who grew up all over the world, mainly in Uganda. So they attacked Rwanda, pretty much trying to claim their land. And when I heard about it, of course I was excited because the government of Rwanda told us it was Tutsi people. And because we've been oppressed so much, we felt like, these people came to pretty much to liberate us. But the more the war continued, the more people were being killed, and we got so scared because, the other political parties, which was I would say PSD, PL, MD, those are other political parties just kind of came together and just started fighting the former government, Interahamwe government. But sometimes they will, associate, or they'll say something which, wasn't, I would say, kind to Tutsi people. And the RPF was labeled as cockroaches, Inyenzi, and it was meant for Tutsis, which was wrong because there was a lot of people, different tribes in RPF.
Okay, let's have a short break.
Okay.
And then we continue. Welcome back. This is the second part of the interview with Kizito Kalima, the 1994 Rwandan genocide survivor. Kizito, before we left for the break, you had mentioned to us about the community in which you lived, which was in Nyanza, Butare. Talk to us about how your typical day was. How did you spend your day?
My typical day was just going to get up the morning and, get ready for school. And I used to ride my bicycle, my blue bicycle, a lot. Or I'll catch a taxi, which was a minivan, and I'll go to school and I'll spend the whole day at school and come back later on. And on weekends, I used to go hang out with my friends. We play soccer in the street. We play soccer. We play volleyball. We play all kind of games. And my village or my community was mostly people who were royal to the kings back in days, meaning, and a lot of people came from Tutsi tribe. And even the Hutus who were there were people who were pretty much, didn't have anything bad or would say something bad about Tutsis, but sometimes we can hear something not so good towards us. They will say something, painful. But most likely, I got along with everybody. We got along with everybody. My family was well liked, and as I said, my entire community was my relatives. So my day was very nice day, and life was good.
Yeah, you talk about interacting, going to play soccer, especially like in your weekends. So are you suggesting that therefore you were able to interact with people from either the Tutsis or the Hutus?
Yeah, definitely. Especially the young generation, when we were playing soccer, we were, interacting. But sometimes you hear one or two people saying something that call you a snake, inzoka. So because I was tall and skinny, and that kind of labeling, made me, feel unsafe around around the other kids, and that's what I was asking my family. Even though my dad never ever see, he wasn't a person who always tell me that this is a Hutu, this is a Tutsi. He always tell me that everybody's all the same. Yeah, they're all Christians. He was a Christian man. So, but I started sensing it when I was, I was 10, 12. From 10 years old, that's why I knew exactly what it was. And in school, of course, in primary school, they'll ask me every single morning that we will go to class, we'll sing the national anthem, we pray, and they will call the names to see who came to school. And they'll say Hutus and Tutsi. They'll call your name, and the later on they ask you who's a Hutu, who's a Tutsi. So you have to raise your hands. So the first time, my friend who was mixed raised as a Hutu, and I raised with him. He said no. The teacher, because the teacher knew my family, he was like, no, you're a Tutsi. And I found myself, we were like two of us in a class of 45 people. And that kind of action, made me feel like I'm different. And the people look at me, other kids will look at me like I'm different, because Tutsis, they're used to call us Inyenzi, Inzoka, which is cockroach, and snake. And that's not something you call people. Once you start labeling people, pretty much it's degrading them. So, and it was somehow uncomfortable.
And after realizing, or after dealing with those labelings, still a young person in primary school, did it affect or change the way you interacted with them? What happened?
Definitely. Like, people were, I would say, full Hutus, like 100% Hutus, I was scared of them. So, like, my friends who are mixed were easier to approach. And others who are, unless they come to me, I was very cautious to get close to them, even though we never had any issues or any problem before. But I started sensing something that, there's a lot of changes. And that time was when the RPF, which was labeled as a Tutsi rebel movement, were fighting. So we knew exactly that they call you Inyenzi, meaning you were associated with the RPF and you are Tutsi and you need to know your place.
Do you remember these teachers at school, their names, who were trying to?
Actually, I don't remember the real name, but what I know, one of them was a Burundian refugee, which was a Hutu from Burundi, who was living in that area, and he kind of was mentioned. I was his side. I was almost 12 or 11 years old, but I was almost 5'11", almost 6 feet. So, and that's being tall and being skinny, it's a typical Tutsi characteristic. And that was his height, and he never liked it. He's always mentioned that, I'm a snake, I'm a Nyenzi. So I don't remember his name exactly, but I know he was he had a Burundian accent.
What you said, you were scared of people who were like 100% Hutu. What does that mean?
Means mom and dad are Hutus.
Hutus.
The mom and the dad is a Hutu, and they have typical what they call Hutu characteristic. People say the Hutus are short, they have big nose, and all kind of stuff. And that's what I was fed. That's what I was taught by other people, especially other. Of course, there's Tutsi who are racist. Who never want to get along with it, and they will say something too. But they were not powerful. They didn't have enough power to make a change that time.
Inyenzi, you said Inyenzi, Inzoka, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think the Tutsis were called Inyenzi, Inzoka?
My understanding was back in the 60s, after the first genocide, there were a rebel movement which named themselves Inyenzi, and they want to bring back the kingdoms, the kings, but they were defeated by the first government. So, and because that time was many Tutsis who were fighting to bring the kingdoms, the king, so they call themselves Inyenzi, which means a cockroach. I don't know why they did it. I'm not sure why they named themselves Inyenzi. I believe, my understanding, maybe they were sneaky and they were invisible. So, but they were defeated. So, but that title kept on until when the RPF, which called themselves Inhotanyi, start fighting. So they linked the first rebel movement back in the 60s to the one in 1990, and they said they're all the same. So being called inzoka means a snake. Snake is long and a little skinny, and there's a lot of, I believe in the Bible, where the snake tricked, you know, Adam and Eve. So, and they say Tutsi people were hypocrites. They will say something not meaning it, and they always trick people. And that was the whole mentality. So, but I didn't know exactly why at that time. But now I believe it was type of degrading us, make us feel like we are nothing, so that we can be controlled.
Tell me about your religious background.
I grew up a Catholic. I went to Catholic school. I used to go to church a lot. Like before class, we had a service, which was like a 6:30 to 7. That's from primary school until high school. And high school was twice a day. And my house was full of Christianity. Christians. I mean, my dad was very Christian. My mom was, my brothers and sisters. And we used to pray a lot. We would pray in the morning. We would pray at the lunchtime. We pray before we go to bed. And on the weekends, we go to help at the church. You know, I was involved in a lot of church activities. So I was very involved in there, in the church, Catholic church.
And what's the name of that church?
Nyanza Parish. Yeah.
Nyanza Parish.
Mm-hmm.
And did your Catholicism or Catholic religion affect what you believed, and if so, how?
It did not, but I couldn't understand how the priests and the bishops would get involved in the politics, because most of the services, like a Sunday services, they'll talk about the current events, which was fighting the rebels, which was RPF, and some priests will go even name called the RPF in Hotani, they call them Yens, which is the degrading terms to use. So I couldn't understand why somebody who's worked for God or whatever, who chose to be God representative, will use that kind of terminology. So it was a little mixed. You know, I was very confused about it because I was young and I didn't know what to do. But at the same time, because of my dad's influence and the schools I went to, so pretty much I just was doing what everybody was doing.
Were all the schools you went to in Rwanda Catholic schools?
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
How many Catholic schools did you go to, and what are they?
Two, Gatagara and Save. That was was supported by the brothers. In Gatagara was they called the Frère de la Charité. And in Save was the Marist. I don't remember exactly, but it was under Catholic Church.
Okay. When you heard about the RPF, and you told me that your dad used to have meetings, of course, before the RPF came, and you had said that that was closely related to the only political movement that your family had a hand in. How did you feel about it?
I just felt like, first of all, I didn't know what it was until after the genocide. But at that time, I remember a lot of people, they would come to my house, and my dad and my uncles, they would tell us to go outside to play soccer or play, and make sure that the soldiers or the police would never come to our house. Even if they come or somebody else comes, we have to run inside the house and tell them somebody's coming. So that time I didn't know. I didn't fully understand what kind of meeting they're doing. But it was, it was a political movement. It was an underground political movement, but my dad didn't want to go out there and be the leader the way he was. So later on, that's how I realized that it was some kind of recruiting for RPF, which I didn't know. But I was very shocked because I was involved. I mean, they got involved in a way I didn't even know, because my job was to pretty much make sure nobody comes to my house.
Did you usually listen to radios?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like we had one radio station which was big thing. So, and we listen to radio. My favorite show, my favorite program was the music and the sports programs and the news sometime, but I didn't care about that much.
Um, do you know anything about radio RTLM?
Yeah, exactly. It came during in 90s when I don't remember which date it was set up, but it came when the RPF was fighting RPF in Contenu, which was labeled as a Tutsi group. So in that it was very harsh. My dad never let us listen to it because they used to call people's name. They used to tell pretty much encourage the Hutus to kill Tutsis. So we never get a chance. And where we lived was very far from Kigali. So the reception wasn't not that good. So we were listening to Radio Rwanda.
Radio Rwanda. Okay. Other than the radio Rwanda, because probably RTM was not very effective in your place, which other means of communication did you know about what was happening in the area?
Of course, we listened to Radio Muhabura, which belonged to RPF, but it was very secretive. Very, very, you can't even turn it on because we were scared of the former government soldiers come to kill us. So we listen once in a while, and or pretty much take shift because we have to be outside to watch people coming to our house. And another radio we listened to was Radio Burundi or Burundi Radio. It was it was not that far from us, and French radio. That's where we got all the news from what was going on the other side of Rwanda. You know that Rwanda where the RPF was fighting. So we will get a lot of French news. And of course, people will send us letters, but we will come once in a while and they will talk in codes, tell you that, this is what happened, this is what's going to happen. So, but as I said, I was young and I didn't care much about politics in reality. So.
In 1994, when the genocide took place, where were you?
I was home during Easter break. So I was, after I finished the primary school, I went to boarding school in Butare, Save. So, and, when I was there and my dad died and I came to my house, for the burial and all kind of stuff. So, and I went back to school. So that was in the beginning, in the first month of 1994. So I went back to school and we came for Easter break. And it was the first time I felt lonely. I felt defenseless because my dad was dead. My dad wasn't there. My dad had been killed or poisoned a couple months before the genocide, or a couple weeks. So
you had come from Save, which is in Butare. Okay, all right.
So when my dad died, I was in school.
Okay.
It was Sunday, I remember. So it was Sunday, and I guess he died on Sunday. They came to pick me up on Monday. My brother-in-law came to get me on Monday, and I went home, for the burial and all kind of stuff. So that was, I believe, in March or the beginning of March. And I went to school to take my finals, to do all my exams and all kind of stuff. So, on the end or the beginning of April, that was the Easter break. So all the students went back home. So I went home and I couldn't find my dad. And I never dealt with it because I had to go back to school and finish all my finals. And I was see my dad was a big guy, 6, 7 feet, like deep voice, very, you can feel he's around. So in that time, the home, the house, I said we had a big compound, we had 5 houses inside, it was empty. So, and I felt a little defenseless, I felt lonely. And after a couple of days, I believe less than a week, that's when the Habyarimana, the former president's airplane was shot. So I'm the one in my family who listened to the news in the morning. I had that from French radio. So it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was kind of hesitating if it was true or not. And I turned on Rwandan radio, and they said that the president was dead. And so as a younger kid, in reality, I never liked the guy. I felt like he oppressed my people. That's what I felt. And that's what I was being told by the people around me. I got up, jumped, I was like, oh, the president died. And I ran to my mom. We had all the cowboys quarters in Africa. You have your own house, and the parents have their own house. I ran to my mom's room. I was like, Mom, the president died. Yeah, I was just jumping and happy. And I could see my mom just drop. I was like, why are you not excited? So she called us, me and my sister and my brother and the other people used to live in our house, our cousins and the house maids or the servants, we call them the maids, and we sat in the living room. So I never seen my mom being scared. I always thought my mom was the toughest person ever. She was like, okay, anytime in Rwandan history a leader of the country dies, there's massacres following, and the victims are Tutsis. So be prepared, there's a war coming. So I thought she was just an old lady talking. I was like, no, man. I was just happy because I thought, the RPF, which was fighting Northern Rwanda, would just come, it would take over, and everybody would be safe, and it would take, it would take a couple of weeks. So, but I was wrong. She was right. I was wrong, because after that, we kept listening to the news, to the radio, and the radio started playing gospel music, and they will pop up with some, painful message, hurtful message towards Tutsis and RPF rebels, which was, pretty much, we are all together now. They said the president has been killed by RPF and has been killed by Tutsis, so every Tutsi must die. So the RTRM was actually pointing out, it was said, they said, John lives on this street, you go down there. Pretty much it was like a directing people where, the killers, where they're supposed to go. So we didn't know that this genocide, these killings has been prepared for a long, long time, because my neighbors were prepared. They were prepared, and they got ready after the president was killed. After the president was killed, they start mounting the road blocker. They start burning the house, and that's why we realized this thing was serious.
So which day specifically, to your memory, do you remember?
If we could just pause for a brief moment to fix the microphone.
Okay. Okay, I was asking, which date did you actually learn about the president's plane being shot?
The same day, it was April 6th in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning news, when that's what I heard from French radio, I guess Radio France Internationale. That's where we used to listen to a lot of news from radio, because they would say something was going on in Rwanda. And when I heard the news, that's when I ran to my mom's room, and I said, Mom, the president died. I was happy. I was, I thought it was the best thing. So, but my mom kind of got so scared, and she just said, okay, you guys come here, we're going to sit down. And so we talked about it. And she just said, every time the leader dies, there's a massacre, there's a killings follows up. And all the time, the Tutsis are the main victims. So we're going to be prepared, and we will, something bad is gonna happen. So, but I thought she was just being old lady. Never, I didn't care that much. So, but the people, my neighbors, were ready. We didn't know that this thing has been prepared for. They have been prepared for the killings for a long time. And I saw my neighbors, getting ready with the machetes and the guns, and they start doing the night, night patrol. They'll patrol the neighborhood or the village, and of course, some of us went there to patrol to make sure that the neighborhood is safe, because they were saying that the Tutsi rebels, the RPF in Hotanyi, which they call them Inyenzi, means cockroach, were in the area. So, but after 2-3 days, that's why we start seeing, they start killing people in my area. So when they start killing, we got so scared. The soldiers came to my house for the first. It was around 1 or 2. It was like daytime. It was after lunch. That's what I remember. The soldiers came to my house and they burst our door. So we were so scared. I saw them coming, and I ran towards like a backyard, and I jumped over the fence. When I jumped over the fence, I ran towards to another village, another hill. People doesn't know Rwanda is a hilly country. So I went to another hill so I can see my family, and that's how when I ran, and that's why I realized that the surrounding villages, the houses, the Tutsi houses are being burned. I would see smoke all over. So that's why I got scared. I said, okay, this thing's real. And I know what my mom said was right. So the soldiers came in the house, they stole stuff, they were looting, and they were following one of my brother, who was an accountant to one of this big government center. So they came to get the keys, and they thought my brother was there, but I believe my brother had left. He passed, he came from where he used to work in another city, and he passed by our house and left, went to Burundi. So, but he left the keys and everything in the house. So they come, got the keys, and they left, but they vandalized my house. And after they left, I had to run away. So, and I was waiting to see a smoke, to see like a grenades being thrown into my house. And later on, when it was starting getting dark, I came back to my house, and I found out, it was vandalized. There was everything was everywhere. I'm talking papers, couches and bed, everything was, a mess. And my mom was like, you need to get out of here. You need to go. And she sent me to the next village, to a guy called Munyaneza, who was our housemate, who was pretty much the guy is a little kid my dad raised. He was a street kid, and my dad raised him, and he became part of our family. He was a Hutu. My dad built him a house, gave him a cows, and helped him to be a man, pretty much to get married. So my mom sent me to the next village called Kigoma, which was like I would say like 15 miles away from where I grew up. So we left. I left, me and my sister and my cousin, bunch of my cousins. We went to this village called Kigoma. We thought nobody there knew us, and it was like a deep village. It was a village. So we left my mom there, and we went. When we were there at the Munyaneza's house, which was who was our housekeeper back in the days, people start spreading rumors that Kalima's kids are there. So they are real cockroach, they are real Inyans, they need to be killed. So the guy who was like a school superintendent called Kabiligi, my dad raised, they paid for his schools, and the guy who was a mayor, Celestine Ugirashe, he's still alive, he lives in England, he's a preacher. So he got arrested for genocide charges, but he was released later on, but he still lives in England, I believe in Oxford. So they start sending police and militias to this guy's house, Munyane's house, and he got so scared. He told us to leave. So in one morning, we were confused. We stayed in his house for, I believe, a week or less than a week. And, it was a short time. It was less than a week. So, and one day in the morning, they came to get us in his house. But his brothers were doing the night patrol with the other militias. So they came and told him, say, they're gonna come kill Kizito and everybody here and you. So you need to let them go. So of course, this is the guy who raised me, because I grew up with him in my house. Even though he was a Hutu, he was very, he was raised by my dad. My dad brought him in my house when I was like a real baby.
Do you know his name?
Munyaneza Imabilis.
Munyaneza Imabilis.
Yeah. So, and I thought it was a part of us. I thought it was my brother. So, and he didn't want us to go because he was so scared. He thought, if we die, he's gonna be, he was gonna feel guilt for, for the rest of his life. But he had no choice. But he chose to go with us. He said, I don't know, there's killings all over, so I can't let you guys go by yourself. I was like, let's go. So we got up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So we went through the banana plantation by the river. We were crossing a small river, coming back to where I grew up. So when we got there, it was the sun came out when we were still in that by the river, that valley. So the Hutu militias have surrounded the whole valley, so they could see what's going on where the river was. And it was a bad area. It was very bushy, and there was a lot of snakes and all kind of animals, that area. So it was one bridge, and on that bridge was like a killing site. So
like how many days is it now into the genocide?
So that was like after 1 week. I would say that it was like in middle of April, because the genocide started on April 6th. But the killings reached our place in April 12. Okay. So that's when he got to my house, and after I went to this guy, the Munyaneza's house. That's when, that was like 3 days later.
Okay.
So in April, like April 15, in the middle of April, the month of April, that's when we were caught in this, we are caught between this mess. So when we were there by the river, they cornered us. So they just left one exit, one area, which was the bridge, and the bridge was where they'll kill people, throw them in the river, or, put the women there and just rape them. So we came to this bridge, and when we were about to get there, people saw me, and they realized we are Kalima's kids. They just freaked out, because some of them, my dad, have done more than what their family have done for them. So they're like, no, you can't go there. They'll kill you. They'll chop you into pieces. So, but I was confused. I didn't know exactly what was going on. So they kind of snuck us behind the road, the bridge. We went through. We went through there. It was a small river. You can walk through it.
Does it have a name, that river?
It was there's a big forest we call the Kinene. The Kinene. It was in the valley between Kinene and the Kigoma hills. It was in the middle there. So I remember the name of the river.
But all this is still in Butare, right?
Yeah, this was it's still in southern province. Okay. So when we crossed, when we get there by this road broke, that's when people told me, say, they're gonna kill you. They know you. They're gonna kill you. So they kind of snuck us behind it, and they let us go. But when we came out, the bushes, people saw us. The people on the top of the hill, they started shouting. That was like 6 o'clock in the morning. 6, it was early in the morning. They started shouting and said, "We found the yens, we found the cockroaches, we found." So they came running. Just a bunch of people just came running. It was just terrifying. So we didn't know where to go because it was surrounded. So they came and just grabbed us. They just grabbed they grabbed me in my shirt and just put me on the ground. They ruffled everybody and they dragged us to I would say like a 50 feet and like on higher ground. When we got there, that's when we found mass killings, dead bodies everywhere. People still dying. People still just blood. It was terrifying. So when I was there, this guy Munyaneza, who was a Hutu and was trying to help us, has been protecting us. He just said, "No, you're not gonna kill these Kalima's kids. You're not gonna kill Kizito." So one the guy tried to hit me with like I'll call ikibando, it's like a baseball bat. Munyaneza, this guy my dad raised, covered me, and he was a hit. So his arm just dropped. They broke his arm. So he fell down and I fell down. So they pushed him away. They told him to go back or he's going to get killed. So they dragged us on top, by the hill. And when I was there, the guy grabbed him in my shirt and tried to chop me off the machete, the panga. So I saw the machete coming and I kind of freaked out and I got so scared and he hit me the machete here. So what I think happened was he wanted to chop my head off, but the machete kind of went awkward, and the shape of the machete, the edge of the machete was like a very sharp edge, went into my head, like deep inside. I still got a little dent here. You can see I have a hair. So when he got there, and he hit me, and I started bleeding, and the shape of the machete was here all during the genocide. I still got like dark spot here, but and when I fell down, I felt unconscious, and they jumped on me. They just they were beating me. By that time I was almost dead, and it was my dead bodies. So I was with my cousins. They were there. They were being hit. They were just crying. It was just crazy. It was crazy.
What are their names?
My cousin was Jean-Marie and Concord, and my uncle, Mzee, he died. He died that time. So, and because there was a lot of people being killed, so they thought I was dead. And we laid there in the ditch of dead bodies. So blood everywhere. And we stayed there for a couple, I believe, more than 5 hours. Because when I woke up, I was just shaking. It was right, I guess after they thought we were dead, they just ran out because it started raining. So we laid there, and when I got up, when I looked around, I saw my young cousins. They are breathing, but one of them was hit with a hammer in his back. He was in a lot of pain. He was kind of screaming, and the other one was hit in the ankle. So I just look at them, and I was like, okay, this is. I didn't know what to think. It was very painful, and I was so scared. But I know we was gonna die. I know we were going to die, and there was no, any way we could get out that ditch of dead bodies. So I told them, like, okay. I kind of got up and I said, okay, let's go. And one of them, who was still like young, I believe he was 9 years old.
His name?
Concord. Concord was very young, and he kind of lost it. So I tried to grab him. I tried to grab him and tried to put him back, but I couldn't. I did find out they're they had beat me my legs, so they end up stripped us. They took all the shoes and all kind of stuff, and I was wearing a jeans and a sleeveless shirt, and it was raining season. It was cold, so we were almost half naked. So I told them, like, okay, let's go. They're like, where we going? I'm like, let's go, let's get out of here. So we kind of walked less than 10 feet, and these people came from nowhere. So they grabbed us, said, okay, let's go. They took us we walked like a mile away, and they put us in this abandoned warehouse. They used to call them like a butcher house, where they would put a lot of people and kill them later on, especially women. They would put the women there and just rape them.
So this is you and Concord?
There's me, Concord, and my cousins. Concord and Jean-Marie, those are my cousins. And Vincent is my cousin too. And Mzee was my uncle. And my sister, Monique. So the story what my sister told me later on was that they never hit her, but they have her sit down so she can see us dying. So they thought if she didn't die, she's gonna be raped. So that was the story she told me, because she doesn't talk about it up to now. She doesn't talk about it.
Are these the same people who, when your mom heard about the death of Habyarimana, the burning of the plane, are these the same people that she put together and talked? Because you mentioned it, you said your mom brought you in the living room and told you things are going to get bad. Are these the same people that you eventually ran away with, or there were other different people?
No, those were other. There were different people,
okay,
because we were in another village or another city or another town.
Okay.
So, but these are people, because my dad was very known in my area. These were people my dad helped. They knew me. They know my dad. They know everybody, because they were even asking me where my brothers are, if they have joined the RPF, why, or try to ask me a question. So these are different people. So when they put us in this warehouse, it was getting dark. It was almost like at 8 p.m. So they put us there waiting to be killed at night. What they used to do, they put you there, and at night they will gather and they'll just kill you, chop you slowly. So in the middle of the night, the guy called Biraza, another guy called Mbari, who are the leaders. They were like cell leaders, came and they opened the house. They opened this warehouse, abandoned warehouse. We were laying on the floor. So they were like, okay, get out, come on. So that time my whole face was all swollen, and I was still breathing. I was still bleeding. So because the deep cut I had, and at that time I had an afro. It was like, during the high top, and my hair was all, was long. But I guess the blood and the dirt has come, like it was like a big thick thing. But I still had blood dripping my face, and I could feel the burning sensation of the machete, because when he hit me, the machete, I had the shape of machete like somebody who been burned by a flat iron. So, and that time we were so hungry, we were so tired and terrified. So they took us to the main highway, where it was like a killing spot for them. So we walked another half a mile, and we were there. I actually could see my house across the street. They took us to the roadblock, which has been there for long, almost for 4 years, where they gathered all people. So when we got there, my uncle's Karol Charles lived. His house was next to ours. We had people, the killers, screaming, shouting that they found people there who were my aunties, and they were still my aunties and my cousin hiding. So when we were sitting on the ground waiting to be killed. They just ran towards to find those the new people, my aunties and my cousins. So, and this was getting dark. So, and that time I just found myself the oldest person over there, and I had to take a, to be in a church. I said, let's go, let's run. So I was hoping that if we ran, they're gonna shoot us. That was the most. I mean, that was the best thing could have ever happened to us. Say, okay, let's just run towards, just towards our old place, because my cousins and my uncle, as I said before, we all live in the same place, like house by house, and we live the same place. So when we tried to run, my young cousin Concord was being so bad he couldn't run, and I tried to hold him. I put him on back, and we start walking. When we were walking, we reached to this my uncle's Carol's house. It was the house was still burning, and I turned around. We tried to go by so nobody could see us, even though it was dark. We were so scared. So when I turned around, we kind of hid behind the bushes because we didn't want the militias to find us. And I told my cousins and my sister to sit down, not move, so I can go check if there's, pretty much the route is cleared. So when I turned, I found out my aunties, my cousins, the women are laying down. They're breathing so hard. They're puking. They're vomiting some kind, that was like a bubble in their face, and their legs were spread. So, and one of them had the stick between her legs, and others were dying. So that was the shocking thing. And when I saw it, so I didn't want to tell my cousin or my sister because they were so traumatized already, and I got so scared. So I kind of went towards them to see exactly if there's somebody breathing. And one of my auntie, who was a teenager at that time, called Nyirahene. We used to call her Nyirahene. So she's like, "Can you give milk?" But she was dying. So I was like, "Where am I going to get the milk?" That's what I asked her, because in the Rwandan culture, we believe milk cures everything. So, and what I did, I just pretty much push them together, and I'll cover them with the kitenge, the cloth. And I came back, and my cousins, one of my cousins, Vincent, asked me, like, "Oh, what's going on?" I'm like, "Okay, let's go." I was traumatized and just shocked, and I don't know what to do. So we just ran. We tried to go towards our house, but we know it was destroyed. But we were young, just traumatized and confused. So once we went there, we tried to reach there. When we got there, it was burning. Everything was burning. So we went to. We separate. We decided to go each way because we were, well, I believe, we were 5 of us, and now we decided, like, okay, we are 6 of us. So we said, okay, 3 here, 3 here. So I remained with the young one, that my cousin Jean-Marie and my cousin Concord, who were young. I was like, okay, let's go here. And my sister and my other cousins.
Your sister, the name?
Monique. Said that she's going to one of our neighbor, which called Nicodem, but she just left, and she left with my other 2 cousins, Vincent and Mzee. Mzee was my uncle though, but he was my age. We used to call him cousins, but he was my uncle was my daddy's actual cousin. So we went to our house. Once we get to the house, our former house, we found out it was burning. It was like smoke and everything, and it was destroyed. So we went to our neighbor, who was a Hutu, but his wife was a Tutsi, and his name was Anthony. Yeah. So when we got there, that's what they told us, that my mom and my aunties, my entire family, I'm talking my uncle, those who are still alive have been gathered at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was like 5 miles away from where we grew up. So they told us we can't stay in their house, we have to go there. So, and when I got there, my mom saw me, and that was after like 1 week. She hasn't seen me, and when she saw me, my face was all bleeding and all bruised up, and I was, I didn't have shoes, and it was rainy season, and I didn't have clothes. I have like a sleeveless shirt, and her and other female and the women in my family just kind of tried to console me, to grab me and say, but they were like, you cannot stay here. They are looking for young men. So when I was there, that's why the militia came, and I just jumped in through the window, and I just went to hide in the bushes. So when I was there, there was a bush, the bush by the church, but I can see what was going on at the church playground. So that's why they started bringing my uncles. One of them, Clavel, and the guy called Nicodem, and there was a lot. The Tutsis in my area, including my uncles and my cousins, my extended family, came there, and they started giving them the same acid they give to my dad. So people start throwing. They would start throwing blood, and you could see. And whoever doesn't die right away, they'll just finish him with the machete or spear, or they would just with the hammer. So, and that time I got so scared, I got so terrified. So by that time they were killing men, like old men or whoever was a grown-up person. So I left the bush by the church, and I went to this and finished the house.
What was the name of the church?
It's Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it was in the area called the Kidaturwa. Yeah, so it was Kidaturwa 7. They used to call it Shuidi Wahirika. So, or they were Adventist. So it was the church behind our house. Behind our land, pretty much.
So it's in Nyanza also?
Yeah, it's in the Nyanza area.
Okay.
It's in the Nyanza area. So from there, and when I left the bush by the church, I went to this abandoned house. The house which was, an unfinished house. The house they were still building, and it belonged to the guy called Dominic, and he was a born Christian. And I know he was a nice guy. Even if he finds me there, he will never kill me. So I stayed there, I believe, like 2 or 3 days. And one day he came to work on his house. And when I heard him, I just thought I was going to die. Okay.
Yeah, maybe before we have a short break, I think I missed this. You said when the president was shot, your mom called you into the living room, you, your sister, your brother, your cousins. What are the names of those people that were present?
Okay, it was my mother and my sister Monique, my brother Benjamin, and the guy who, Goofy and Peter, or Petero, Goofy and Petero were our housekeepers. The people who used to work for us, but they lived with us.
Okay. So you all leave the house and you leave your mom there?
My brother Benjamin left the country, actually. He went to Burundi right away. And my sister Monique and I went to the neighboring village, to this guy, Munyaneza, the guy whom my dad raised.
Yeah.
But the Hutus, Peter and Ruth were Hutus. They used to live in our house. They stayed with my mom.
Okay. And what was Munyaneza's village? The name of
Kigoma.
Kigoma was Munyaneza's village. And the hill, you mentioned the hill. Let's be past the hill. Does it have a name?
Kinene.
Kinene.
Yeah.
And the last question, I think you said Munyaneza's brother. Did you mention Munyaneza?
Brothers, they were, Munyaneza was a Hutu, which was raised by my dad,
Yes.
but he grew up in our house, and he was he was like a brother to us. But he has his brothers in the Kigoma village, but they were out during the genocide, as every Hutu was obligated to control, to check out the place. So they were out there, his brothers, and I believe one of them is Mvuye Kure. I don't remember their names.
And maybe the last question before we have our break. You mentioned your uncle, Karori. Was he your maternal uncle?
He was my paternal uncle. Actually, he was my dad's cousin. So he was, I would say, he was my dad's cousin. That's how I can describe. Because, in our culture, we call everybody uncle and auntie. It's so hard to explain to people, that this is the first cousin, the second cousin, or the first uncle. We call everybody, as long as we are, we're all related.
Okay, let's have a short break.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Okay. Before we went for our break, you were telling us how you had just jumped through the window. And while hiding in the bush, you saw how they poisoned your uncles and I guess neighbors.
Cousins and neighbors.
Yeah. So what happened next?
So when I jumped through the window, I went to hide by the bush. There was a big bush by the church, but I moved from there. I go to this and I finished the house belonged to Dominic, the guy called Dominic, who was a born-again Christian, and I thought he would never kill me because I knew the guy was a very nice guy. So later on, after a couple of days, I believe 3 days, he came to work on his house, and when I had him coming, I freaked out. I thought he was going to kill me. So he saw me, and, I was hungry, and I was laying on the dirt floor. So at that time, I didn't have any shoes, and it was cold. And I had a sweater which I was given by my mom's friend. It was a female sweater. So, but that's the only thing I could put on. So he told me that my parents, my mom is still alive, but my uncles and my extended family members who were, especially males who were in the church, had been killed. And he said that he would tell my mom that I'm still alive. So, and he left. And when he left, of course, I had lost trust in everybody. I knew if he goes back and he come back, he was gonna kill me. But I was I was ready to go. I was ready to die. I was sick and tired of suffering, and I was so hungry, man. I was so hungry that I got to the point where I was numb. So he left. Actually, he left and he came back later on with some food, ugali, which is ugali and beans, and he gave me milk, and that was the best day in my entire genocide life. I was so happy that at least I got something to eat after a couple of days, and he told me that I had told my mom that I'm still alive, and she's still alive, and so pretty much told them, and in the morning, the following day, my mom came. So in the morning, like in the middle, in around 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, I saw like a shadow of somebody coming through this and finish the house. And when I heard her, walking, I thought it was the killers had found me. So I got so scared and started praying. I said, Lord, I'm ready to go. Please, forgive me what I've done. And I was just ready to die. So my mom was covered with the cloth in her head and with kitenge. And she kind of bent through this and finished the house, and she came and she said, Kizito. And when I heard her voice, I was like, okay. I was relieved. So she came to me, she held my hands, and we started praying. She said, I know I'm not going to raise you. Sorry. I know I'm not going to raise you, and, you know, our days are coming, but you'll be a man. Man, when she said that, I just felt like, you know, now it's time to grow up. It's time to, you know, pretty much she's gonna die. That's the message I got. So she, you know, we talked. She said, okay, the war is just, man, sorry.
It's okay.
Man.
It's okay.
Yeah, man, it's tough. Talked about this many times, but I can't. You know, it's always touch a subject when it gets here. And when you know, I stood up, and you know, when I was young, I was taught that my mom was, you know, I used to call her the shortest part, but she was just a normal height. But you know, we're all big people, we're all tall. So I was taught that my mom. I kind of hugged her, and she said, "Okay, I'm not gonna be around. I'm not gonna raise you, but you be a man. You know, be a man, and you know, pretty much take care of yourself." And you know, she said, "You be a man. You know, take care of your sister and my sister Monique, and your cousins, because you know we're all family. You know, it's like whoever, you know." Everybody has died, pretty much. Every man in my family. Every man in my family has died. In our family has died. So I was pretty much the oldest male left. So, and she gave me a hug, you know, kissed me on my cheek, and she was like, "Okay, you know." Man, no, showed me. Man, it's tough. She said, you know, after she told me that, you know, be a man, you know, take care of your sister Monique and your cousins, you know, give me a hug, kiss me, and my cheek, and she just left. So I still have the memories of her just walking away, and it's something I always fight. Damn, it's you know, I try to block it, but it's so. I mean, it's tough. It's tough, but anyway, she left, and I believe the following day, the mayor, the one I mentioned who lived in England, came with the police officer, like a chief police back that time, and the other militia leader, and came to the church, and he said he came with the microphone, and he said that, you know, the peace has come, and everybody come out the hiding, so we're gonna take you to the Kigoma office. I mean, mayor's office, which was like far away from us, and we're gonna protect you. But it was a trick. They wanted everybody to get out. So, and when I heard that, I knew there's nothing left anyway. So I just got out, you know, hiding, and I went back to church to see, you know, to listen to what the mayor was saying. So the only people who were left there were just females and the kids and babies. So they just escort us going towards the mayor's office, which was like I believe, like a good an hour drive away. So we went and we walked like 5 miles, and when we got there, of course we were walking in the middle of a highway, the highway from which connect Kigali to Butare. So, and we're being paraded by everybody by the sidewalk, just chanting Sikolas, cockroaches, snakes, Indians, whatever you name, saying our days are numbered. Everybody was saying that it was a song. The people, the Hutu militias were saying that the God is good. The days of Indians or Tutsis are over. So, and they were just singing. Everybody singing, chanting, and so I'm young teenage kid in the middle of, almost 50 people, and I'm the only male. I was a real tall, taller than everybody, but still struggling with my injuries, and everybody could see. And I would turn around, I would see the kids I grew up with, the people I was playing soccer with, and everybody's like, "You Kizito," and it's like they blame me for being a Tutsi. I didn't even know. So, and when we walked, I believe 5 miles, and once we got there, they realized, it was a trick. They just they just decided to tell us to stay. They said, "Okay, you're not gonna go anywhere. We're gonna protect you from here." So they put us in this another warehouse. They used to get like warehouses or the storage where they used to, they put to sell merchandise. So they were emptied and they become like a prison. So they put us there, and the whole village is a place called Mukingo. The whole village came, surrounded us, but it was, among of them was, the Hutu militias who are just spying us to know exactly who's there. And there was a trick they used to do so they can bring everybody who's in hiding, bring out everybody. So we were there for I believe 2 or 3 days. I don't remember which day, but everybody started coming out hiding. So everybody said, "Okay, there's this place by Mukingo's village. People are safe. People are being protected by the government, and people are being protected by the soldiers and the militias." So after everybody was gathered, the mayor passed by in a red minivan. I still remember it. So he passed by, and everybody chanted, and say, "We are working." He came and he told people, like, "Are you working?" Meaning, "Are you killing?" That was the term used, and everybody, "Yeah," you say yes. They shouted, "Yes, yes." So, and because I was the only, pretty much the only male, the grown-up male there, everybody was telling me, like, "Don't go by the highway. Don't go by where you can be seen. So stay behind the houses or stay inside this little butcher house. This is warehouse that they put us in." So after the mayor left, he came like it was like 11 in the morning. So around like 3 p.m., he sent a bunch of militias, a pickup for militias, with the guns, the grenades, and the machetes, and everything. So they were led by the guy called Nzaramba. And they came, and when we saw them coming, everybody shouted. They knew exactly that the killers who were surrounded just start whistle. They used to use a whistle to call everybody. So when we heard the whistles, the young people, we ran. So I just ran. It was, one is a hill, as I said before. So it wasn't everything's just you go down or you go up. So we just ran towards the marshland or the swamps. So when we got there, when we were running, a bunch of kids. I would say a bunch of kids were running. When we were running, they start shooting and throwing grenades. And one, the guy I was running with, he got hit by a bullet in his back and he fell down. But the impact of the bullet, kind of shocked me because I thought I was shot. So I fell down and I started rolling on top of the hill. And when I was running, one of my sister, Irene, had to come to hide where we were hiding, but she hid and it's called like a terrace. It was it was in a banana plantation, but she was hiding like a little ditch there. So when I was running over, I kind of stumbled on her, and she had her twins kids who were infants. And when she saw me, and I wanted to help her, but she was like, no, keep going, they're not gonna see me. So I kept running towards the marshland, the swamps, and when I was there, I went and just deep into bushes. I hid there. So, and we continue hearing grenades and gunshots and all kinds of stuff, people screaming, and it was terrible. So they were killing people on the other ends. So, and they came to look for us. So now they came to look for us in where we were hiding. So they came with the dogs, the hunting dogs. So when I was hiding between banana plantation, a hunting dog came sniff me out. So when he was sniffing them, people came and find the guy called Mpisi. I remember him exactly. Came to me with a spear and a grenade in his hands. He said, "Get out, get the hell out." He cursed me out. And I was like, "Please don't kill me, please don't kill me." I was like, "Get out." So he was like, "Do you have money?" I was like, "I don't have money." He's like, "I'm gonna kill you." So before we separated, I separated from my mom. My mom has given me 30,000 Rwandan, which was back in the days, it was like $100. I would say like $100. So I had that like a band of notes in my pocket. So I gave him like a 10,000. So he saw other money. He saw I still have money. He was like, give me more. I gave him another 5,000, I believe. So he went. He sent his brother called I believe Hamie. So he came and Hamie said, "Give me the money." My brother told me they have money. So I gave him all the money. So, and after he left, so now because they know I was there, they sent another militia to come to get me. The people I even know I never seen from other villages. So they came, just grabbed me, just tied me up my back, and one of them hold a gun in my hand. So they escorted me back to on top of the hill by the main highway, and that's when I got there. That's where they were packing all my extended family members, including my sisters and my cousin, my nephews. They put them in a pickup and a minivan, and the last car, which was a little Nissan Datsun, like a small car. It's like a neon if you compare to American car. Was the last one. So I seen them, dragging my mom and open the trunk, and they kind of pushed her in because they have put my sister's kids, my Irene's kids in there. And when I remember exactly because I was like, like a 20 feet away from her. She told one of the guys, like, "Mwana wanje ndijana." Pretty much like, just my son, don't push me in. I can do by myself. I can put myself in this trunk. So they opened the trunk, and she was, they kind of pushed her in. And my auntie, my uncle's wife, was all pushed in, and other nephew and nieces were in there. I can see them just, but on top of each other. So the only way I didn't get in is because I was too big and they didn't have a place for me. So they can't hold me there. They say, okay, we're gonna come for second round. So, and that's the last time I saw my mom, and she was just driven away. So from that time, this was in the middle, like by the end of May, by like a beginning of May, and things were getting heated. So people, every place was, just dead bodies, and you can hear screams and the smokes everywhere. So when they took my mom away and my extended family members, I just know it was my turn. The next step was they would come get me and kill me. So they pushed me back in the butcher house, that warehouse where we were before. So, and it was later on, it was late. So, and because whatever they were killing people, whatever they were doing, they were using drugs and alcohol. So all of them were drunk. So they had like a fire in front of this butcher house, this warehouse, where they were, they were just guarding us. They were waiting for us to, to get out of being killed, whatever. So they were waiting for the militia leader and the mayor to give an order to send more cars to come pick us up, me and the other people. These are people I never knew. So in the middle of the night, I just look around and I say, okay, they're gonna, chop me off. I was scared of machete. After I got hit, I was so terrified that somebody's gonna kill me, like slowly. I said, you know what? I'd rather be shot or be, Now I didn't want to be cut into pieces, so I kind of opened the back door. I looked through the window and I found all those militias, those killers that around the fire. They were smoking, marijuana. They were drinking alcohol, the local, kanyanga, which the local brew. It's like moonshine. So when I looked through and I saw them, pretty much passing out, and I told the other kids I was with, okay, let's go. They're gonna shoot us, and that would be the best death ever. So some people were scared, and I wasn't scared because I didn't have nothing to lose. I was ready to die, and I was willing to die in any means, whatever death I would get. So I just opened the window, the back door, and I just took off. This was almost, it was like a midnight or late. It was in the middle of the night, and I took off, and when they heard me running and the other kid followed, they started shouting. And they went through to look who left, and I don't know what happened, but I know whoever left there was killed. And when I ran with my other cousins, my cousins, we went towards the swamps. It was big swamps there, and it was a sorghum plantation or cornfield type of. It looked like a cornfield. So we went there. We just ran there, and we went like a deep inside, and it was like a small river, and there was a lot of wild animals. It was bad that whoever's gonna stay there either is gonna be mauled by the wild animals, or he's gonna die by malaria, or bitten by another animal, or he's gonna die by hunger. You're gonna die because you didn't have nothing to eat. So, and that's where we went. We went there, and I was with my cousin Vincent and my cousin Jean-Marie. So we went there and just stayed I would say like a dry ground, but in the middle of swamps. So we found that small place, and we stayed there from May until July, until the RPF came to capture, to rescue us. So during that time when I was there, I mean, being honest, I didn't know what I got, after a couple of days, I was so hungry that I kind of lost conscience. I was so skinny that you know, it was like a skeleton. We used to, sometime at night, we'll get up and kind of push some nasty yellowish looking water and just drink a little bit of it, or we get up and just grab like a fresh cones, or grab something we can squeeze in our mouth. So we stayed there for, I believe, 3 months. And when the RPF, the RPF rebels captured our area, we didn't know because we were so deep in swamps that we didn't know what was going on. So, and that time I had lost my hearing. I was so hungry that I couldn't even hear. I remember my cousin used to communicate with me. At the end of it, they would just write down, they would scratch me and they would just write me down because I could not hear what they were saying. So, and one of them, Vincent, said that he thinks the war was over. So he just kind of write down, and I said no. And he said, he said he saw the RPF soldiers, the uniform they used to wear, like a rubber boots, and he said I heard them speaking Swahili, which was a common language in the RPF, which the Rwandan former government, or the genocide government, they used to use French. And I said, no, that's a trick. So, and the RPF soldiers will use the microphone, loudspeaker to call people out. So, and I would just try to communicate with them, just writing on my arm or my leg, and tell them, no. That's the same trick they used to get us our hidings. So, and one day we saw RPF soldiers come by the river to fetch water. So when we saw them, my cousin Vincent, he was the one who was still pretty much had energy, said that he's going to see if they're real soldiers, they're Arab. He's like, I don't care, we're gonna die anyway. So when he got there, he talked to this guy and he found out we were, he was not the former government soldiers. So he came and he went and told other soldiers. So and now this time I could not walk. I was so dehydrated and I was so hungry. So they came with a wheelbarrow, put me in and a wheelbarrow, and they just weighed me out, took me out and took me to this makeshift clinic where they were the RPF rebels or soldiers were staying that time. They had a little clinic. So what they did right away, because I was about to die, they put me, they gave me an IV, and I stayed on it, and on a drip for I believe for the whole afternoon. And they gave me milk. They fed me, and after a couple of days, after I believe 2 or 3 days, they told us to go to the refugee camp. So in the refugee camp, that's where we all traumatized. The internal refugee camp in Mugandamure, everybody was traumatized, but I found myself in the middle of, I found myself as the only survivor, the only male in my entire family who was still alive, or who was there, and I had a bunch of kids, so I had to take over and become like the leader, or pretty much become the parents to them. So we stayed there, and they moved us to another refugee camp in Bugesera, and we kept moving around different internal refugee camp, and later on, we I believe a couple months later, that's where the school started opening. The life came. The other people captured the country. The school were working, and that's where I tried to go back to school. But when I go back to Save, where I used to go to school, when I got there, things were changed. I was another totally different, another guy. It was bad. I had a bad attitude. I hated everybody, and I was the blink of killing people. That I didn't care about anybody, anybody who you stand in front of me, I will knock you out. So I got into with the school principal, and I was expelled. Never been in my life got any trouble, not even a single bit. I was a very smart student, and this was the toughest moment in my life. So it was too much for me to handle. I didn't have a place to go. I didn't have anybody to live with. So after they pretty much, we got out all those refugee camps, internal refugee camps. I started living with the, like a foster families here and there, friends. Not staying in a place for more than 3 months or 2 months. So, and by the end of 95, I was the point where suicide was the only option. I didn't want to leave. I didn't care about anything. I wanted to die. I was like, okay, so that's why I survived. Now I can't even find food. I grew up pretty much in a rich family. We had everything we needed. It was hard for me to find, shoes. I couldn't even get it. It was just too much for me to handle. So, and I said, you know what? Yes, I'm going. So I was told that my brothers and sisters were living in different countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. Kenya and Tanzania. And I was like, okay, I'm going. I'm going to Kenya. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't know how I would get the money. So what I did, because that time the country has become, has a little, it was a little better, and the people were still, struggling to make it, but at least there were no killings around. So I decided to go back to my village, the Nyanza, where I grew up, and I went with one of my friend, and we went pretty much to terrorize this village, to tell, because he was the one his name is Apollinaire. He's the one they said he stole our cows. So when we got there, said, you're going to give us our cows or we're going to kill you. So he got so scared. So pretty much we robbed him. I robbed him. So, and I took the cows, I sold the cows, and that's why I got the ticket, the money to buy a ticket to flee, to leave the country. So that's when I said, you know what, I'm done. I can't leave this country because the dead body, the smell of the country, because there was a lot of dead bodies everywhere, and the destroyed buildings, everything just would drive me crazy. Whatever I see, destroy the house, or I see wherever I go, the country was all completely down. Nothing was working. It was, even people were coming, or people were trying to build the country, but it was too much for me to handle because I never had to be on my own. I never had to worry about anything. So that's why I just decided. I took up, and say I went to Kenya, tried to find my brother. So I got there. I couldn't find him, and we kind of crossed each other because they had to come to see if somebody survived. I went to Tanzania, it was the same story. So, and later on, in the midst of that, I found refuge in sports. Basketball became like my medicine. And whatever I was hiding, whatever I was going, I always find a place to play volleyball, basketball. So when I was in Kenya, I started playing in like a neighborhood playground, and this Kenyan guy saw me, said, you know what, we can help you to develop your game. So that's why he signed me up with a club called KCB, Kenya Commercial Bank, and I started playing with their junior team, and that was the best thing ever. So, and sports became a part of my life, and I was an athlete before, but I didn't know that this is the only way I have now left. So, and whenever I step in the court playing, whatever I do, I will see people chanting. There were people screaming, and I kind of felt like at least I'm not useless, like the way I felt. So, but the life after basketball or whatever sports, it was hard because I didn't have a place to stay. It was hard. I was living with family, friends, whatever, who can put me, who can lay me in a house. So, and when I came back I went to Tanzania. I could find my sister, but my sister was moving back to Rwanda, so I was, nobody was there to help me, so I tried to come back to Kenya. And when I got in Kenya, that's why I found out there is a school in Kampala, in Uganda, Kampala, which gives scholarship to the athlete. So the guy called Tony, who was a friend with the family I was staying with, he said he knows the school principal. He said, "Want to go back to Uganda? I'll see if they can help you." So he went and did, talked to the school, and the school said, "Okay, well, you can come." And they went there. And when I was there, I started playing for them volleyball, basketball, and later on when I got connected to this basketball amateur club called the Falcons. That time we used to call Blue Jackets. And the guy who was there, Mr. Simba, he became like a daddy to me. He became a mentor. He just realized, I told him my story, what I went through, and he said, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to help you. If you're a good kid, I'll make sure that this basketball thing will take you somewhere." So he promised me he's going to bring me here in America through basketball. So, and basketball became my way out, everything. So he put me in school. He became like a mentor to me, and I was going. I used to take 3 buses to go to practice. So, and sometime I'll find myself not having enough money, but I would just run from Boyogere, which was very far, to the main highway, and I would run from one bus stop to another one. So because I didn't have enough money, but after 1 year, everything, he just realized that I was good and I was dedicated whatever I was doing, and he connected with the coaches here in America. And one day I went to practice, and he gave me a letter, and the letter said, "You are invited to participate in international junior basketball tournament in Savannah, Georgia." I almost collapsed. I just felt like, oh my gosh, now I'm gonna leave this place, this pretty much refugee life, and I'm going to a place where I can take care of myself. So I didn't know exactly what was, I just felt like, I need to get out of Africa. I need to get out. I need to be in the place where nobody's gonna kill me because I'm a Tutsi. That was my main thing. So, and I ended up in 1998 and went to high school, went to college, and moved down here in 2006 in Indianapolis. Now I'm here.
Wow, what an amazing journey of life.
Yeah.
I have a few clarifications that I wanted us to make. You mentioned the mayors, the mayor in the name who provided transportation and would give orders, and I didn't catch on his name. What was
Celestine Ugirashebuja.
Celestine Ugirashebuja.
Yeah.
And then, okay, he was a mayor of...
He was a mayor of Kigoma, but Kigoma, and it was in Nyanza, like Nyanza area. Okay. Yeah, back in the days it was Nyanza. It's Nyanza district right now, but back in the days we had some communes, or it was but now it was a mayor of Kigoma. Okay.
And also you mentioned that after Munyaneza brought you back, I think he was escorting you back to your place, you reached in a place where there were so many dead people, and that's where you got your first injury. Do you remember the name of that place?
It's a hill called Kinen. It's a forest.
Okay.
It's a forest, and on top of the hill, it's called Kinen. It's the same area by the river, where the river talked about.
And then you also mentioned a place called Michingo.
Muchingo.
Michingo. Where is that located?
Muchingo, it's like it's like a 15 miles, 20 miles from Nyanza,
From Nyanza.
and it's between the city of Nyanza and the town of Ruhango.
Okay, so is it in Butare?
Back in the days, it was in the Gitarama
Gitarama.
prefecture, but now it's always Nyanza.
Nyanza.
Everything has changed now. It's always in Nyanza. It's in Nyanza district.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you spent a significant period of time hiding in the marshland
Marshland.
or the swamp, as you called it.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have a name, or did it have a name then?
Yeah, the swamps of the marshland are called the Ruanghanza.
Ruanghanza.
Ruanghanza, yeah.
Okay. And still it is in Nyanza. Okay.
It's still in Nyanza, but I was told that it's dried out. It's drier now, so it's called the, I believe, climate change.
So while running towards the marshland,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I missed up on that detail. I missed that detail. You mentioned you are running with somebody. Is that Vincent, your
It's
cousin, or
Vincent
somebody else?
and Jean-Marie, those are my cousins, and the other kids, because we were a bunch of kids in there in the warehouse. But those, I ended up staying with the Vincent and Jean-Marie in the same, I would say the same area, the same place in the marshland, in the middle of the swamps of marshland.
Okay. Do you have an idea when, time-wise, when you went into that marshland?
I would say in the beginning of May,
Beginning of
in the or late April. I don't remember, because after I got hit, after I got knocked out, it kind of lost consciousness. That's the last time I remember clearly when I got knocked out by machete. And after that, I was into confusion. I was kind of hallucinating.
And also earlier in the story, you said after the orders of the mayor, when they put your family into the trucks or the cars, where do you think they took them?
They took them to the mayor's office, because later on, my brothers and sisters found my mom this mass grave, and my sister this mass grave by the mayor's office in Kigoma.
Okay. And you talked also about while hiding in the terrace by the marshland near the banana plantation, you kind of jumped over, or you tried to jump over your sister. And did you what was her name?
Her name was Irene. She was caught later on, and she was killed with my mom. So when I jumped over her, I tried to come back. I didn't know she was there. I was just running, and I saw her and tried to come back to. She was like, "No, keep going, keep going." Yeah. And that's the last time I saw her. So, I never seen her being put in a truck or in the trunk of a car like my mom. I believe she was put in the first. It was like a 3 cars. It was a minivan, I believe, and a pickup, and this little neon type car looking. Yeah. So, and that's the last time I saw her.
Is it Eileen who had the twins?
Yeah, my sister Irene has I believe she had like 3 sets of twins, and all of them most of them got killed. The one left, the only one surviving, her name is Noella. She's still alive. She's in college back in Rwanda. And she was her twin sister died during the genocide.
Do you remember her name?
Emanuela,
and then Noella.
Noella.
Okay. Then you later were taken into a refugee camp in Mugandamuri. Where is that located?
It's like a mile or 2 from Nyanza.
Again, still in Nyanza.
It's in the Nyanza area. It was in the Nyanza area.
And you also mentioned, is it Bugesera or Bugereza?
Yeah, Bugesera, Busoro. It's in the Bugesera area, but it's in a place called Busoro. That's where they moved, because we were in Nyanza. I mean, Bugandamure refugee camp. It became unsafe because the militias were still coming and just killed people in there. So they moved us down there, and we stayed there.
Um, while still in the genocide period and all this is going on,
Mm-hmm.
where do you think you got the strength, to keep running and hiding?
You know, I always say I believe in God. I think God had, planned for me, and I think God kept me alive for the, something I don't know. But I was so scared that, I always try. It was tough. I wanted to act up so somebody can kill me quick and just get done with it. But luckily, people, I never met, people never found me or whatever they're trying to kill me never happened. But I believe it was God. That's my personal belief.
And after the genocide, you mentioned how you were in this state of hopelessness or helplessness, recalling how you used to have it all and now you have none. First of all, how did you think of getting out of the country? Specifically Kenya, because that's the first country you mentioned.
When I was left alone, as you said, I had this thing. I remember what my mom told me, to be a man. So to me, being a man, it wasn't just growing up. I was like, you got to do what you have to do to help yourself. Pretty much you're on your own. So I just felt like nobody cares. And I was looking for my brother, my family member. Somebody told me, I knew my family members had left Rwanda before the genocide, and they live in Uganda, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Europe. So I knew exactly if I get out of the country. I was craving for attention. I needed somebody to come and say, oh, I'll take care of you. So I was just acting out. I was like, okay, let me get out of here and let me go. So of course, there's people, especially businessmen, who are going to get things from Kenya, who knew my family. They say, let's come with us. That's why I was following them. But nobody would say, okay, we're going to take care of you. We were saying that, will you go with us? We will tell you where your brother used to live. We're not sure where he lives. But, Africa, that time, nobody had a cell phone. And we don't have street names or the numbers. So you just go and, if somebody knows somebody that will help you out.
Okay, so you already had family before the genocide in Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda?
Yeah, my brother Karim and my sister Mazita and my sister Beata had left the country before the genocide.
Okay.
And they were living in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. So, and I was looking for them. But, after the genocide, after the war in 1994, a lot of Rwandans who left were trying to come back to see if one of their family members survived. So, and I was crossing, my brothers and sisters were coming when I was going. So we kind of crossed each other. We didn't know, we didn't have any phone numbers. We didn't have any communication with them. I didn't have any communication with them.
Okay. So Karim was in
Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah, he was in Kenya. So I was going to Kenya to find Karim. That was Karim or Zita, one of my sister, my brother.
Okay.
So.
And the last question before we have a break. You mentioned of this family that we are staying with in Boyogerere.
Mm-hmm.
That
in Boyogerere, I was staying in boarding school.
In boarding school. Mm-hmm. So which family is it that helped you connect to the sports world?
It's a guy called Tony who was related to my brother's wife.
Okay.
So my Karim's wife is mixed of Kenyan and Ugandan. Mm-hmm. So, and she grew up in Kampala. So her cousin Tony used to come to Kenya a lot. Mm-hmm. So when he was in Kenya and I was there and he heard my story, he said, I know this school in Uganda where they help kids. So, and that's why he came back and connected with them, and I ended, they arranged and I believe he helped me to get a ticket and come back to Uganda.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's have a Another short break.
Okay.
Okay. Before we went for the break, you had told us about the experience of your mom being taken, and then eventually you discovered as a family where she was buried. When did you know that she was buried at the mayor's backyard or whatever?
Actually, I knew that when when I was here, when I found out about my when I started talking to my brother Egide, who lives in Belgium. That's why he told me about the whole how they went. I believe in '96, they talked to people, and people told her that she was taken to the mayor's office. I knew she was taken to the mayor's office, but I didn't know where she was buried, and so they reburied her. They took the remain of her body, and she was reburied at my house, my home.
And who are these people that your Egide talked to?
The guy, the Munyaneza, the guy who who I grew up with, I talked about who helped us in the beginning with the genocide. My mom was like a mom to him too. So he kept searching, and he's the one who realized he's a Hutu, of course, and he was he had a lot of access, or he had a lot of knowledge about who did what. So, and he found out the guy who killed my mom was later on killed by other militias because he started killing babies, and but he found out the guy was the mayor's office where my mom was, and she was killed, where she was buried. So pretty much information came from Nyanezo's knowledge, where contact with the other people.
So was he buried also after the others killed him in the same place?
No, actually he was killed when they were fleeing the RPF. When the RPF took over, he fled toward Congo or Zaire back in days. But when they said when he was fleeing, he started killing even Hutus, because he had killed a lot of people. People thought he was crazy. He had lost it. So he was killed by other Hutus because he had killed a lot of people, and he started killing other people, the Hutus, not Tutsis.
Did Munyaneza know his name?
Yeah, he said. I mean, when I was talking to my brother, he said he believes Munyaneza knows his name. But this is a touch subject. My family don't like to talk about it, especially to me, because I think to some extent I'm affected, and always try. Even if I was trying to talk about it, they're not willing to respond to me. So it's like, whenever I ask a question, what they know, they was not cut me off, because they don't want to go into details, or they don't want to know exactly. So, but that's how it is.
Yeah, you had also mentioned the area you grew in, which is Nyanza in Butare, predominantly Tutsi people, and the minority actually here were the Hutus. So during the genocide, how did this play into?
Most of Hutus in the area can't hesitate killing the Tutsis. So, but the leader of the genocide, the government, they have to act, and you have to obey the rules, the order from the top. So they will bring people from other villages or towns to come and kill. Or, the few Hutus who got involved in genocide in our area, most of them were sent to other place. So what they would do, they would switch the killers. So they'll bring the people from other area, like the people who actually picked up my family and my mom and my sister was people from another town called Ruhango. So these are people. These now are the people I grew up with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You said militias.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
When I say militias, I'm talking Interahamwe militias, which was sponsored and trained by the government of Rwanda, the former government, Habyarimana's regime government.
Okay.
This was pre-1994, pre-genocide.
So, how would you compare them to soldiers, for instance? Are they
They
totally
were,
different?
I mean, there was government soldiers which were fighting the war with RPF rebels.
Okay.
And the militias, Interahamwe militias, were the people trained by the soldiers, but they never wore uniforms. But some of them carry guns. Others carry, I want to say like guns. Others carry machetes. Mm-hmm. They carried spears, the traditional weapons. But they were well connected with the government, the soldiers, the government soldiers, because the government soldiers were focusing on fighting the rebels, and the Interahamwe militias were focusing on killing civilians.
So, is there any possibility that there was what was predominantly tribe-wise the Interahamwe, or who were they?
I would say that 99.9% they were Hutus, because it became a war between Hutu and Tutsis. Mm-hmm. So the Tutsis were being killed because they were overpopulated, they were overpowered. Instead of fighting the RPF, which was a rebel movement and a political party, the government, I believe, couldn't handle the war with RPF rebels. They just tried to twist it to make it look like it was between two tribes. And they knew if they go tribes, the Tutsi will lose because we are few, they were minorities. So, mainly the Hutus, the Interahamwe militias were mainly Hutus.
Okay. When soldiers, you said, came to your mom's house,
Mm-hmm.
who were these? Were these government soldiers?
There were government soldiers because it was in the beginning of a genocide. So they came, as I said, my brother Ejid was working for the former government, and he was in charge. I believe he was an accountant for this center, the training center, where they used to send the government workers for any kind of training. So my brother was an accountant there. So this group of soldiers who came to our house were looking for my brother so he can give him a key to the safe so they can get the money. So these were government soldiers. They were wearing uniforms and had guns and all kind of stuff.
And will be the last question before we transition into the post-genocide period. These refugee camps where you went,
Mm-hmm.
who was there? Who worked there? Who took care of them?
And I call them refugee camps, but mainly it was something people, build up. It was protected by the RPF rebels or soldiers that time. But there were no non-profit organizations such as Red Cross or anybody who would provide food or any kind of housing or a clothes with medicine. So we kind of gathered in the same area, like Mugandamure. It was like it's like a little neighborhood. It's a place where everybody gathered. Some of them stay in a house, some abandoned houses or somebody's house. Others will stay outside. So we called it a refugee camp, but it was pretty much like something people just came together, and it was easier for them to be protected by the RPF rebels or soldiers that time.
Okay. And in these camps, were they only Tutsi people? Was it everybody?
No, there were everybody, most, but mainly were the Tutsi survivors, because these are the people who didn't have a place to stay. But some Hutus came because they were scared of, like some Hutus never participated in genocide, or who hid some Tutsis, so they didn't want to stay in the village because it was so dangerous. They could be killed by the militias, the Hutu, the Interahamwe militias, or they could be caught, between fires, because at that time the RPF rebels were fighting, were shooting, they were fighting. There were still fights going on.
Okay. You mentioned already how you had gotten into Bweyo Gerere, and I believe from Bweyo Gerere, that's when you made the transition from Africa to the US. Okay, so tell us how the process started of.
So when I was in
into the
Bweyo
US,
Gerere
yeah.
progressive school, it's called a progressive school, a high school. I was playing sports. I was playing basketball, as I said, and volleyball for the school. And one day we went to play a tournament called the Sprite Tournament for the high schools in Kampala. And it was sponsored by the Sudanese guy called Manute Ball. He just died recently. He was a basketball player. He came here back in the 80s and he played in the NBA. Very tall. He was like a 7'7", I believe, Sudanese guy. So he had, he was living in Uganda at that time. He was helping his Sudanese people, Southern Sudan. And he used to organize the high school tournaments. So he organized this tournament with the help of Coca-Cola company. It was called Sprite Tournament. So when I was playing that tournament for my school, that's when I was spotted by the local club called Blue Jacket. That time was called the Blue Jacket Basketball. So a guy called Ronnie came to me and he said, we like you and we want you to be a part of this local club, with the basketball club. But I told him at that time I couldn't even speak English. I was speaking Swahili. And I said in Swahili that I live in I need a permission. I need a permission from school, because I was there for applying for school. So that's why everything started. And that's why the owner of the club and this coach, this guy called Ronnie, got involved and came to my school, talked to the school principal, and the school principal, actually I believe the vice school principal was one guy called Mugisha. He's the one who told me that he's not going to stop my talent. He said, we're going to let you. You can play for both. You can play for school and play for the club. And when I started playing for the club, this local basketball club, the owners or the managers of the Blue Jacket Basketball Club split. So the one guy called Simbwa, John Simbwa, he took the young kids, the high school kids, and the other guy, went with the all people. Grown up or but the college kids. So, and we changed the name. We changed the name from Blue Jacket. It became Falcons Basketball Club. So, and there, I was the main player, and I was, pretty much he built us from there. And that's how he realized we became so close, because every time after practice he would either take me to the bus station downtown, because we used to practice in Makerere University. He would take me downtown, or he would take me to school, which was very far away from downtown. So, but we became friends, and he became like a mentor to me, and I felt like at least somebody's looking out for me. And that's when he started, telling me that there's a chance that I can come here, and he started connecting me with the coaches here, and he knew exactly. He has been involved in basketball, federation in Uganda for a long time. So, and that's the one who helped me to come here pretty much.
So when did you get here?
1998, July 1998. I came to play at this tournament at the Savannah, Georgia, at the Armstrong College, and from there, I was I went to Chicago to play for the high school in Chicago, Providence St. Mel in Chicago.
So did you go to that high school? Or?
Yeah, I went to the high school, Providence St. Mel in Chicago, and after finished the high school in Chicago, I moved to South Bend, and that's why I went to college in South Bend. And I tried to play basketball there, but I tore my Achilles tendon and blew out my knee. So that was my end, my basketball career. And but I stayed in school, tried to finish, and just live a normal life. But it was hard because for I would say for almost 10 years, basketball has saved my life. It was the only thing I could. It was the only therapy, because I would get mad, I would get so frustrated. But whenever I picked up the ball and I'm right there, it just make me feel like I'm somebody. So, but when I tore my Achilles tendon, I couldn't run no more. And I remember when I told my college coach Parent, he thought I was quitting, but I said, "Sir, I can't do it no more. I'm done." He's like, "No, you can't quit. You can." I'm like, "No, I can't. It's too much for me to handle." So, and I cried so much because I didn't know what to do, because I knew basketball kind of, changed my life, protected me, kind of keep me in the line.
So when did your basketball career end, and when did you come to South Bend? And,
No, pretty much my last playing time was 2004.
okay.
That's when I tore my Achilles tendon. It was June 2nd. I remember because my birthday is June 3rd. So it was June 2nd, 2004. That's where I tore my Achilles tendon, and I had a surgery June 11th. And my legs start shrinking, and I was so scared that I would never walk again. So it started getting short. I was, and I went through physical therapy, and so I tried to go back and play again, but I couldn't run. I didn't have the energy, and I just, I had my knee, sprained my knee in high school, but I just never pay attention to it, because I said, I can play without play. I just only take some pain medicine and I'll keep going. But I got the point where my body gave up on me.
So which college did you go to?
Indiana University in South Bend. It's called IUSB.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a small town school. We didn't even have a gym that time. It was just playing at the middle school. But
Yeah. After the genocide, especially in Rwanda, came something called the Gacaca. Do you know about it, or have you ever heard about it? Have you ever been approached to participate?
I know about Gacaca. I know Gacaca courts, and but I have never been approached by the judges. But I've been approached by the killer. I don't know where he found my number. Actually, he raped my entire cousin. Every young female who was in my family was, he got involved. He was raped. He used to go take him in his house, and some of them got pregnant, others, lost it. So he kind of called me one day. I was sleeping, and he called me, and I picked up the phone because it had that Rwandan phone number. I thought it was one of my brothers or sisters. And he asked me if I can help him. And I was shocked. I was like, why? He's like, I guess he mentioned that he wants me to write a letter to the church court that he saved us, or he saved my family. When he saved my family, meaning those girls who was hiding around his place or in his house. But I know those who were able to talk to me told me that he raped him and his brother raped them. So, and that time I was still going through emotion. I got upset and hung up on him. So, and he kept calling, and I kind of sent a message to him through one of my cousins who lived in Rwanda. I said, don't tell him not to call me. I'm not ready to talk to him. That was back in the 2000s, I believe 2004, 2005. But I believe that if I ever been called or I've been approached, I will testify because I've seen a lot.
And what was his name? Did you get his name?
Oh, his name, they used to call him Regan. That was his nickname. So I don't know. That's was when I was growing up. I believe his name is Leonard. But it was name, his nickname was Reagan, like the former president here.
And so how did you know that he actually raped your
My
family?
cousin, one of my cousins told me.
He told you?
Yeah, and a lot of girls who stayed there. Some of them, one of my cousins called Makama Zumhaka told me. She told me about it. So he told me that he was, some of them got pregnant after they were here. They were there.
And so at least they remember him.
They remember him. He's fighting for them. They took him to the church, I believe, to the church, and he said that he never, he didn't kill anybody. So I don't know if he's denying. I never talked to him about the case, and these girls don't want to talk about it. So, but I believe they took him to court. To the church's court, and he needs somebody who, to say that he never done anything. Of course, I don't know if he ever killed somebody, but I know those girls who are around in his house or around the place, because he was a militia leader, or he was somebody very, no, people were scared of him. Whatever he would say, the people would listen to him. So, but those people in my family who lived around him were not, none of them died. But they took him to the church and he raped some girls. So.
Maybe before I ask you, probably the last question, would you be okay to mention some of the names of those ladies?
No,
you cannot.
they told me not.
Not to
They
mention
asked. I've been giving speeches around, talk about the gym, but those girls said no, they're not ready, and I respect that. I very, very respect that. I say they're my cousins, but I cannot say maternal. They said no, don't talk about it. That's it.
And you respect that. Okay. The whole world will listen, or people will listen to your testimony. What would you want them to hear? What message would you want to convey to them?
Yeah, I want to just tell them that the genocide happened, the Tutsi genocide happened. What I always say is that, Hutus died during the genocide, but they were not the target. There was a genocide against Tutsis. They were the main target. And the Hutu got caught in genocide were mainly because they never want to kill the Tutsis. So we all, that died in their family. My heart goes out to their family. But what I want to tell the whole world is, even though we went through the genocide, I personally, I don't like to be called a victim. I don't want to feel like I'm a victim of, I just feel like, okay, whatever happened to me should be a motivation to make sure the genocide never happens again to anybody, a Hutu, a Tutsi, or anybody over the world. And to make sure that we work to help or to rebuild the lives of those who've been affected, you know, and to make sure that people are educated enough, they know exactly the cause and the consequences of genocide. And that's what I want everybody to know and to learn, because the way the whole world acted during the genocide, it's kind of bothers me until now, because people could have stopped it easily, simple and easily, but we were we can't. I believe it seems like nobody cared. I may be wrong, but that's how I feel. That's my personal opinion. So, and I want to make sure that this thing, if ever happened to anybody anywhere, we should act. And when I say we should, I know myself. I will act in any means necessary, as long as it brings peace to any people. And even if it means to lose my life, I'm willing to do so. Because I can't sit and see people dying and I'm not acting, especially my people. That's the last thing I want to see in this world. So I would like everybody to get involved and help as much as you can, and make sure we live in a safe place, safe world.
And when I entered, I sensed you have family here. Tell me about your family here.
You know, I have, you know, I'm married, of course. I'm married to my wife, Stacy. You know, she was born here. She's American. But when, you know, when we knew each other, we've been known for, I would say, since 2007. So we were friends first. We started dating, and later on we decided to get married. And after getting married, before we were getting married, I found out through the genocide survivors I was helping, that he has little sisters who grew up in an orphanage and foster family back in Africa, back home, Rwanda, and they ended up here to something I'm still trying to figure it out. It was through basketball, through sports, the same way I came here. But having gone through the same basketball sports thing, I know how, it's so, there's some illegal thing going on. So there's a lot of manipulation. So when I was helping Jean-Pierre, that's a young kid from Rwanda, he didn't have a place to live. He was just going to school. And when I was helping him, he told me that he has little sisters who lived in Texas, Houston. And I asked him how they ended up here. He gave me some vague answers because he didn't know who I was and he didn't know. But he told me that the kids were suffering. They didn't have any place. They didn't have food. And the oldest had injured her leg, had torn her ACL, and nobody could take her to the hospital because no one was her legal guardian. So that's why I get involved. And we drove to Texas. So when we got there, and me and Jean-Pierre and my wife, Stacy, we find out the kids were in bad shape. So have lost a lot of weight. Has been there for almost a year. Never went to school. Couldn't speak English. They've been here almost a year. And that's why I asked the family what's going on. And they never gave me any clear answer. So, I asked them if they have any legal papers to adopt or to be the legal guardian. They gave me some printout, something they print out on the internet. And I said, okay, this thing is going to be different. We're not going to leave these kids here. And, we start talking. So, of course, they got the point where they found out that, we are serious and we want to help the kids. So our intention was, me and Stacy, to go there and see how the kids live. If the family was claiming that they are going through financial hardship, but we are willing to help them, even if we send money to buy food. That was my main focus, to help them, so but the kids could live a normal life. And so when we confronted them, they couldn't give us a clear answer. So we decided that Jean-Pierre, he's 21 years old, and I was helping him. So he asked the family if they can send, release the kids to him. That's his little sisters, and I was willing to help him, and that's why we brought him here. When we got here, we have, of course, to go through some legal issues. We have to fight through the courts, try to figure out what happened. But the kids needed, especially the oldest, Josiane, needed medical attention. She needed to go to the hospital because of her knee. So we ended up getting legal guardianship. And in the middle of all those, they look at their papers. I'm talking the girls, Josiane and Leanne. They found it was temporary. It said temporary guardianship. So, and this is the kids who've been bounced around the world. So she said, "Can you adopt us?" So, and my intention was to adopt them later on, but I want them to know me, but they needed somebody to adopt. So to me, it was enough. So that's why we just changed everything. We started applying for legal adoption, and on I believe December 24th, 2009, that's why everything was finalized, and that was the best Christmas gift I ever received, man. It was the best thing ever. I was happy. I know exactly now nobody will bounce these kids around. Nobody will push them around, because I know they are young girls, and they're innocent kids. They didn't choose to be orphans, but people take advantage of them, put them apart, put them right there, tell them what to do, and nobody focuses in real life. Nobody give them guidance. Nobody put them in school. The fact they've been here for almost a year, before they never went to school, they never had any grades. That's kind of shocked me. So we brought him here, and we adopted them. We went to court, and the judge granted the adoption, and they were happy. Now, they're going to school. Their GPA is 3 point something. They came here with a 0 GPA. So, I mean, that's the happiest thing in my life, man. It makes me feel good that at least finally I can protect, survivors.
Yeah. You are a proud father, and congratulations.
Thank you.
But to the listeners, maybe, who are they? How did you? I know from Jean-Pierre, the brother, but where are they from? Are they?
There's the Rwanda genocide survivors who grew up in Nyamata area, which is pretty much less than an hour from Kigali. So their parents died during the genocide. So one of them was 2 years old, another one was 4 months old. But the story, they're not ready to talk about it, but what I get from their brother, and they have a big sister who lives in Rwanda. They always tell me that when their mom was killed, was holding the young one, and they killed her with a spear, and she fell down. The mom fell down, and she was holding the young one, who was 4 months old, and the other one, who was 2 years old, Josiane, came crying on their mom. So one of the militia leader came and grabbed them and took to his house, but he took him in the house because he has been holding hostage their family members. The girls, pretty much what they call kubohoza, which means he was raping the girls there in his house. So that's how they survived. But their mom and dad died, and Jean-Pierre, the big brother, was hiding in bushes, and he still has a big scar like he was hit by I believe he told me that it was some kind of a hammer, and his knee is kind of crooked, and you can see something sticking out. So, but for them, they're still young. They were young. They don't know exactly what it. They know the impact because they lived in 7 families before they lived in orphanage, and from orphanage they just lived in foster families. And they told me that this is the eighth family they lived in, but no one of them ever told them to. Nobody ever step up and say, you know, you're mine and you're not gonna go anywhere. So they were just being, I mean, pretty much they were kind of pets in the house, but because nobody ever step up and say, you know what, this is your school. I mean, I'm gonna be your dad, I'm gonna be your mom. So I told them, you know, then I'm not that old, and you know, biologically, one of them I cannot be her dad. Yeah, but I said that you know, I don't care what you call me, but I'm your dad. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something, you know, by ever done to you guys, because it was, you know, this could be me if I was younger than you. So, but it's the same scenario. Whenever I see them, I see myself going through the same thing if I was younger. So, and that's how we ended up here. And, you know, I mean, everything's good. Everything's good. They're happy. They're very joyful kids. Very smart, very respectful, very well-mannered. So, and I believe, so my, you know, I told them that I want to see them graduating from college. And I'll make sure they do it. They will do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us your
thank
testimony.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You want to? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Kizito, thanks for bringing your family. Please introduce to us the people around.
Okay. This is my lovely wife, Stacy Kalima, and this is my daughter, Liliane Kalima, and that's Josiane Kalima.
Stacy, I have a question for you. How did you meet Kizito, and how has his wonderful life affected you?
Kizito and I actually met out in Broad Ripple. So we met out at a club. I was still in graduate school, and I was down here in Indianapolis visiting a friend. And we just went out to have a fun girls' night. And I seen Kizito when he walked in the door, because he had to bend under the door frame in order to get in. So I noticed how tall he was. And then we started talking, and he was saying that he was taking some graduate classes too, and we started talking about what we were interested in. And we were very just good friends at first. I lived in Chicago and he lived here, so we were just good friends for a long time. And then gradually it developed more into relationships. So his life and his story is something that he disclosed to me slowly. I knew he was from Rwanda, and I knew what had occurred in Rwanda. I started researching more after we became better friends. I think I text messaged you in Kinyarwanda one time, right?
Yeah,
So I started learning more on my own, but he was slow to disclose what he had actually been through. And even still today, I learn something new every day. He'll tell a little bit more of a detail every day. So that's kind of how we met. Impact, it is my life now. I feel like I have some Rwandan citizenship right now. This is the language they speak. Kinyarwanda is what they're comfortable speaking, so that's probably about 50 to 60% of what is spoken in the house. Music, food, culture, mannerisms, they're all adapted and adopted, I would say. The ones that were able to, we kind of meshed together, my culture and his culture.
And what do you do for a
I am a therapist. I'm a home-based therapist. And Kizito's a probation officer. He actually, as of this moment, works about 2 blocks from me, downtown Indianapolis. So we had a lot in common on that point also, because we were both kind of interested in government and social services, trying to help people.
And a therapist, a genocide survivor. How does that?
We joke that he picked me on purpose. We often say that he picked me on purpose.
Yeah.
I think being a therapist helps me a lot as far as understanding some of the things that the kids struggle with and that he struggles with. But also vice versa. I think the fact that he's been through such a traumatic event gives him a very distinct perspective on life. He's very slow to get excited or too caught up in things because he's been through something that's much more significant than some of the smaller things in day-to-day life that we get caught up in. So I think we kind of balance each other out. If one of us is if I'm getting a little too excited, he can balance me out and vice versa. And as well with the girls, I work a lot with youth. So when they're having their teenage days, as we like to call them, because they are Rwandan, but they've been here a while now, so they have their teenage moments, then I kind of have that perspective to be able to help them through that.
And living with the Rwandese, and specifically with Kizito, his story is mind-boggling and such an eye-opener to me who has heard it. What about you? What have you learned through the time you've known him?
Well, I still get emotional if I hear him tell his story, even now. To me, it's just unfathomable. I can't imagine having to live through something like that. He just provides me with a sense of determination. I feel like I can accomplish and overcome anything, and really inspires me to want to continue to help people, to know that helping people is what we should be doing. I think after a situation like his, it would be fair for someone to say, I survived, I'm good, let me just live my life and be good and not worry about anyone else because I'm still alive. But I think what's unique about him and what I love about him is that he wants to help other people every single day. If he could find a new person every day to help, he would. That's kind of his personality. So he's really, I think, just an amazing person for wanting to continue to help people in spite and despite what he's been through.
Kizito, back to you. After all you've gone through, here you are with a wonderful family. What does this mean to you? What has it brought to your life?
It's a blessing. It's a blessing. All years or many years I was on my own. I was trying to, I grew up in a big family and I want, some kind of stability and sense of a family around me. But based on my story, the life I lived in, it was hard to have a family, and pretty much, as I said before, I always had to do things on my own, and I chose to do good thing, to help people, which is helping him too, because knowing Stacy's here, knowing the girls Josiane and Leanne here, it's a blessing. It is the most joyful thing in my life that, I always enjoy. I enjoy to go to work, come home. As Stacy said, I'm a probation officer. I work with the criminals. It's not an easy job. I can spend 8 hours not smiling, talking to people who don't want to listen, but because I want to help them, I don't give up. So, but when I come here and I see these girls upstairs taking pictures, laughing, so it just make me feel like, okay, it make me feel joyful. And when I talk to Stacy and when I see her here, I always feel like I'm the luckiest person in this world because, you know, here Stacy from, you know, here in America, and I'm from Timor's tiny little country in Africa, thousands of miles away, but we met, we connected, and she accepted my luggage, which is to me, I didn't want anybody to go through, to, pretty much to, I didn't want to bring anybody in my life because I know it was too much to handle. But, I found out she's an amazing woman. I can't even explain how helpful and how wonderful she is to me, because I know, sometimes I get too excited or get too, get too caught up in this genocide thing. But she's always there for me, and she's like, okay, everything's very good. It's good. Now you have a family. And she always reminds me that I have a family, and which is the most important thing in my life.
Kizito, Stacy, Josiane, and
Is it Lillian?
Liliane and
I
Josiane.
confuse them every day.
Thank you so much for letting us into your house.
Mm-hmm.
Kizito, thank you for blessing us with your testimony. Thank you, and thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. We appreciate, and you're always welcome at my house. Thanks again. Ready?
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
we're recording.
Okay.
So, Kizito, tell us something about this photo.
That photo is my dad, my father, Dennis Kalima, and I believe it was taken in the 60s. So I don't remember him looking like that. The only memory of him I have is when he was in the late 50s. He wear big old glasses. So I believe this was back in the 60s when he was working. He was a mayor, and I believe was when he was working. It was in a government building. That's what I believe it is.
Okay.
We're recording.
Okay. In this picture is my wife Stacy, great parents. I believe it was back in 1800 or 1900 in Arkansas.
Okay.
Okay, and this is my daughters. This is Lillian, and this is Josiane Kalima.
Where?
Oh, this picture was taken here in Indianapolis. I believe it was last year, July 4th, 2009.
Good.
And this is during our wedding when we went to. It was October 10, 2009, and this was during our wedding at the court downtown Indianapolis. And this is Leanne, this is me, and this is my wife Stacy, and this is our family friend Rosa Gatete, and this is Josiane. Okay. And this is my brother Benjamin, whom I haven't seen him more than 10 years. And this is his kids, and I never seen the kids. And this is my niece Delicia, and this is my brother Benjamin, and this is my nephew Dallas.
And where do you?
Oh, and this was taken in Rwanda, I believe, back in 2003. I'm not sure exactly, but I believe this was taken in 2003. But I had this since 2004.
Okay.
And this picture was taken during our wedding, our Rwandan/American wedding. And this is my mother-in-law. That's Stacy's mom, Sheree Jones. And this is my wife, Stacy Kalima, and this is me. And this is my brother, Ejid, whom I haven't seen him since 95. It was almost 16 years. The first time I saw him was during my wedding. And he lives in Europe. He lives in Belgium, but he works in West Africa.
Where was this taken?
This was taken here in Indianapolis in Oman Hotel. And this is my brother Ejid again, and with his kids. And this was taken in Rwanda, I believe, in 2008. And this is my niece Larissa, and this is my nephew Eddie. And this is was during their baptism in a Catholic church back in Rwanda, Kigali. And this is this is during our wedding, our Rwandan and American traditional wedding, and it was taken here in Indianapolis on March 27, 2010. And this is me, and this is my wife Stacy cutting cake, and this is our friend Judy, and this is Stacy's little sister, Kendra Jones, and this is during our wedding.